Hey, Birchouse friends, welcome back. So this week's question comes to us from Caitlin Noska, who asks, Hey, Birchouse, how do I introduce my son into art and history so he'll be interested? Caitlin, this is such a good question, and we're going to explore a few different avenues of discussion because I think this is a really important question. I think raising up our young people, lifting them up and helping them expand their worldview is critical for our advancement as human beings, for the advancement of our society, our world society, for our culture. So I think this question is so important. It's such a good question. Having said that, I spent the week really meditating on this and thinking about it, and I came up with 4 points I want to discuss. So I'm going to try and keep this concise. I'm going to try and keep this short, but I also want to give this question the answer it deserves because it is such a good question. So my first point is to expand what you mean by history and art. I think with art, we tend to think of things like painting and sculpture and pottery and photography. But art is so much more than that. Music is art. Filmmaking is art. Storytelling is art. And not just conventional storytelling like short stories and poems and books. That's art. But so is something like video games with a narrative. Something like Red Dead Redemption 2. Has this beautiful introspective story. That is art, that storytelling, and not just the storytelling of Red Dead Redemption 2 or video games of that nature, but also all the technical stuff that happens in the background, the set dressing, the designing of a game. That is art. Construction can be an art. Anything that you craft and you put your love into, and you crafting that thing, and you present that to the world, that is art. History, same thing. We have this kind of narrow view of history. We look at things like the formation of the United States, World War II, the Civil Rights Movement, samurai, knights, we Vikings. We have this kind of, we look at things in very broad terms, either a chunk of time and say, oh, well, knights, or we look at like very specific events, like the Battle of the Bulge. And that's a poor way of looking at history, and it doesn't really... It's all history, but there's so much more to history. History is so much more broad. So what do I mean by that? Well, your genealogy is history. Your formation as a family is history. Your family tree is history. If you go into any small town, you'll find their little historical society. And it's not going to be full of these events like the Civil Rights Movement or, the Civil War or, anything like that. There are going to be a bunch of small events, almost unimportant events, but they shape the history of that town and the personality of that town. Our friends at Swordsmanship Museum and Academy have a logging museum. They have a fishing museum. That is history. It isn't big battles, it's logging. And it's a key piece of history on how the United States is shaped and formed, both in the larger scheme of the United States and in their hometown, in their home state of Michigan. In my own hometown, I'm from Lancaster, Ohio, the home of General Sherman, the mighty Civil War general. But they also just revealed a statue of Scipio Smith. Who is Scipio Smith? Look it up. It's a fascinating story. A final point I want to make, one of my favorite authors is Erik Larson, who writes books like, they're all history, and he has some of those big events. He has a book about Fort Sumter, the lead up to Fort Sumter in the Civil War, or the Sinking of Lusitania. But he also writes books like Thunderstruck, which follows the biggest murder case in England at the same time, exploring Marconi's fight to get the radio up, invented and operational. And so you tell these two divergent stories, and these are not huge battles or huge events in and of themselves, but they are a fascinating look at both history and a time and place that are unfamiliar to us. He writes Isaac Storm, which talks about, which is a book about the hurricane in Galveston, Texas, 100 years ago, that wipes Galveston, Texas off the map. These aren't these like huge events that we learn in school, but they're history. So expand what you mean by history and art, because history is vast and art is vast. And while maybe you might be interested in one aspect of history or art, you might find that your child or the people that you love are interested in a different aspect, and that is really, really cool. Okay, so next I want to say exposure. If you want somebody to be fascinated by something, if you want somebody to find that thing that turns on the light and goes, oh, I really like this, you have to be exposed to it. If you have the means and it's nearby to go to a museum, go to a museum. There are usually quite a few museums around. Just here in my home state of Ohio, we really like to go to there's a museum in Cincinnati we really like to go to. There is the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland. That's a music museum. COSI is a science museum that delves into history. We have the Air Force Museum near Dayton. These are all really good museums that kind of bridge between history and art. So if you have the means, go to a museum. But also, most towns have art galleries or art shops. Go in, talk to people, talk to artists, look at the artwork, talk about what you like, what you don't like. Look for an art festival or a history festival. Like the Ohio Viking Festival we go to every year. It really isn't prohibitively expensive if it's near you. We have the Ashville Viking Festival. We have so many. We have the Hocking Hills Medieval Festival. There are festivals all around for history, and there's so many festivals around for art. There are so many art galleries out there and museums. Expose yourself to art and history. Talk to artisans. I can tell you now, as an artist myself, artisans love to talk about what they're passionate about, and they want to tell you about it. They want to, if you ask questions, they're going to be so happy to answer those questions for you. So expose yourself, discuss it, explore it. Kind of on the same planes, but really try and do stuff with it. Do some art. Make some jewelry. Paint a picture. Draw. Sit down with your kid and do artwork. And not just like, oh, here, kiddo, here, have some crayons and color something, or here's some paints and paint something. Sit down with them. Find the time or make the time. And I get it. I know. Between my wife and I, we run two businesses. She works a full-time job. I manage the household. We have grandkids. We have adult kids that we need to visit who are out of town. We have family out of town. We're always doing something. Make the time to sit down and explore art with your kid. I know that can be hard, but it doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't have to be expensive. It could be as cheap as some paper and pencils. Write a comic book together. Doesn't matter if it's good or not. Explore art. It is the most important thing. Explore history. There are so many good YouTube channels that I think do a good job of talking about history, even if they're not super detail oriented, or they're not maybe missing details. There are so many good YouTube channels that are good touchstones for a larger exploration. A channel I would shout out like right away is OverSimplified. If you don't mind a little bit of crass humor, they explore a oversimplified look at historical topics in a way that I think is very funny, very entertaining. They explore some of the big topics like World War II and the Cold War, but also some of the more niche topics like the Banana Wars, the Emu War in Australia, the War of the Bucket. What are those things? Go check out Oversimplified. I think they do a stellar job at being a good touchstone and getting you interested in those topics and wanting to dive in and explore more. Explore history. If you got any kind of historical society around you, go check it out. If you have historical things around you, go check them out. Once again, here in my home state, Ohio, we don't just have all those museums I mentioned. We have lots of Native American sites here. We have the Serpent Mound. We have the Hopewell culture around us. We have Indian mounds around us. Those are free to go to. You can just go to them. I had a dentist appointment that got changed and canceled at the last second. And my wife and I happened to be next to the Hopewell Mound. And we're like, well, we were already out and about. And so we just drove like 5 minutes and went to the Hopewell Mound and spent the day. The kids were in school. It was just my wife and I. And it was a lovely fall day. We held hands and walked through the Hopewell Mound. And it was beautiful. There are things around you. You got to find them, explore. But you got to do it. Do it with your child. You want your child to be interested. You have to be interested. Explore, and try your hand at things. Finally, and this is my last point, accept that not everything you're interested in, your child will be interested in, or your other loved ones will be interested in. And this can be hard, because you get passionate about the things that you love. You get passionate about art. You get passionate about history. I have 3 kids. Only one of them is really into this stuff, into swords and spears and battles and building shields and this kind of work. And that's my middle son, Simon, who works for me now. You've seen him in a few social media posts. Of the 3 kids, he's the only one that's really interested in this. And I don't force this on my other kids. My oldest son, not super into this stuff. He's moderately interested. He likes to, we have discussions and stuff, but he's not like taken with this. What I will tell you is he's an incredible musician, an innately talented musician. And so my wife and I, we just encouraged him in that direction. My youngest son is not into this at all. But he has this deep love of guinea pigs. He's talking about opening a guinea pig rescue. And so that's something my wife and I are trying to help him get started. He's looked at maybe some jewelry making. He's starting to get into the world of antiques, antique jewelry. Look, whatever is your passion, you should go after it. Don't force this stuff. You force it, your child will become resentful, and they're not going to like this stuff. There are people who are super into math. They love math. They love numbers. And that is just incomprehensible to me because I do not like math. I cruised my way. I really was dodging balls in math all throughout high school and college. I do not like math, and so it's simply incomprehensible to me that somebody could love numbers as much as I love history, as much as I love art, and yet there are people who are. The old saying, different strokes for different folks, and people being interested in different things is what makes this planet, the human race, so wonderful and beautiful. Your kid may never be as interested in history and art as you are, and that's okay, because there is something that they are equally passionate about. Find that thing and encourage it, make them love it, or help them love it, help raise them up in that. And maybe along the way, you can find that niche thing, that niche historical thing, or that niche artistic thing that makes them go, oh, I like this. And you can help them explore that too. Let each of my kids is beautifully and wonderfully, uniquely themselves. Let your kids be uniquely themselves. And like I said, you keep at the other things, the exploring, the expanding, the what's the other word I used? Exposing. You might just find some common ground. Caitlin, that was such a good question. Like I said, I tried to keep this video concise, but this is so important. Raising up our young people is so important, and I really wanted to talk about this subject in a meaningful way. So, Caitlin, thank you for asking. For the rest of you, thank you for listening to me stand on my soapbox and yammer. In the meantime, if you ever have a question for Birchouse, comment below with "Hey Birchouse, ask," and we'll answer it in hopefully a much shorter video. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you all in the next video.
Welcome to Birchouse, where history meets art with due diligence.